So, as usual, today's podcast is going to have a little bit of a schedule to it. First, we're going to start with basic facts, things you need to know. Then, we're going to move into statistics, real research backed by evidence, doctors, scientists. Then, we're going to go into our student speaker section, where a real student is going to share their experience with mental health. Then we're going to go into our global charity, which is going to show a charity that's working to improve the lives of people with this condition and how you can get involved with them. Then we're going to go to my personal favorite part, Celebrity Spotlight, which is going to show the portrayal of this mental health challenge in the media, people who you may not know have the mental health challenge and what they say about it. Finally, we're going to go to our therapist corner, where a specialist on this mental health challenge is going to tell all, give you everything they know, tips on how to deal with it if you think you might have it, etc. And that's it. So let's get into it.
First time I saw I was overthinking was in 7th grade. And at first I started thinking, oh, everyone's going through this, it's middle school. Yeah. Everyone has an awkward phase. But then I entered high school and it started getting worse. Not only with relationships, but with friendships and with school and with everyday things. I would overthink every single tiny little situation. And it would lead to just me having an anxiety attack, right? Not being able to talk to anybody because I don't want it to be a burden, and just be alone. And that led to problems socially, right? Being from someone who says hi to people around school to someone who just hangs out by themselves in a corner, right? That when I started noticing it started getting bad. And after talking to a few friends, I decided to go talk to someone, and I got that help when I needed it. But even this year or recently, there's been times where overthinking is getting to the point where it's crippling. I know other people say it feels like a heart attack. But to me,
it doesn't have to feel the same for everyone.
To me, an anxiety attack feels more like my mind is racing at 2x speed. Right? I could see it physically when my eyes start darting around a room. That tells me my mind is thinking about too many things. I could feel it that my heart starts beating a lot. I can feel it when my leg starts to shake. And it feels like everything is moving. And I'm moving too fast for everything to process. And that makes me feel like I'm incapable of doing things.
My name is Ash. I've struggled with body image since I was in 7th, 8th grade. It's definitely been a long process of getting to where I am today, just through loving yourself and accepting yourself and just kind of just being who you are in general. I'm a 12th grader, which is great. Going to college soon, so I'm super, super happy about that. So I can't wait to kind of dive into this. This is really great. I'm really happy to be here. Back in middle school, for me, it was just constantly criticizing myself, seeing images and just being wow, I don't like who that person looks like, and just constantly judging. And always I have a twin sister, and for a long time, we've always been put against each other, where it's comparing and being okay, you want to be like her or you want to be like me and stuff like that. So for a long time, I always wanted to be at the same weight as her for a long time. We had a scale that we would share, and just I'd constantly want to make sure that I was never above 5 pounds than her or anything like that. So it was very, very hard, like kind of growing up in that way. And just having to constantly like remind myself that I need to stay at a certain point in order to be like, perfect in a way, or just be like a healthy person when health doesn't even like relate to your weight. I was like working out all the time, going to the gym, trying to like run a lot, even though like I hated it. Instead of exercising, I just turned more to like eating focused, where like I would just like try to manage that instead, because that way I can gain more control, because sometimes like exercising, it's just like it can be so like mentally draining, whereas like eating, it just like is a choice of doing it or not doing it. And that's where it came for me. And like it definitely like peaked more in my junior year, where I was just like really, really restricting, having very, very minimal food as I can, and just getting through the day without hardly eating anything. And it just got to a point where like, everyone started to notice, and, people were concerned. It was just like seeing myself differently. Like I had like a lot longer hair, and actually the reason why I cut it was last year because my hair was like falling out and I was losing quite a lot. Wow. I had strands that were like, it didn't look healthy. It didn't look nice. So I was like, I'm just going to chop it. Yeah. So that's also the reason why my hair is so short. Yeah. And I just kept it that way. But obviously it's a lot healthier now. But also my nails were turning blue just from kind of losing that circulation. One of my friends brought up that my skin looked a lot paler than it does usually. And she was very concerned about that. And just like, not like standing up was very hard, because I just felt like I was gonna faint every time, and it was just so like I just felt like a zombie every day at school, and like having to wake up, it was just so hard. And like there are a lot of things that happen when you don't eat. It is essential, and like it's extremely dangerous not to. And like I learned that like firsthand, where like it's just not worth it. It's really horrible.
Bad things happen to your body when you don't like fuel it as it needs to be fueled. And I was like that was the moment where I realized, okay, like the things in my mind have impacts for things on my body, and like a beautiful girl is also a strong and healthy girl, and she needs to like take care of herself like that. I don't really think anyone knew. I don't know. It's kind of bad, because it's one of those things where it's like, it's bad, but if you stop doing it, you'll also feel awful, right? It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, or like a negative feedback loop almost, that like if you need help, but you can't bring yourself to seek it, because that just feeds like the problem you're like trying to solve. Yeah. I think like these kinds of things can just be camouflage, and it's easy to assume that like the kid who walks alone to school is depressed, or like like the super skinny girl has anorexia. But it's just like it's so different from person to person. It was almost out of body for me, because I was like, oh my god, like me, why? Yeah. But it's a valid experience for anyone to have, especially growing up in like this culture. But I think another thing I do want to say about it though is it wasn't, at least for me, it wasn't even about like as much about being like pretty, or like like that Barbie body, as it was about like control and like self-control and discipline. And I hold myself to a very high standard, and I appreciate the fact that I'm able to like regulate myself in some ways. But once I recognize like, okay, this is probably not the way to feel like all your ducks are in a row, and like exert some semblance of control over your life, and like you can chill and like let things go with the flow. I think that was a lot of what like my therapist and I kind of worked on, to sort of like break the idea that like micro-controlling this thing would somehow grant me like stability and like prosperity or something, like whatever that wants out of it. I could talk about therapy and how much it's like saved me so I think it was definitely like my therapist definitely won the war of attrition. He definitely played the long game with me, but I think one of the things that just really helped was I went to the Bay Area, I think over a break, and I remarked to him, I came back and I was like, there's so many like beautiful, confident girls there, they're such baddies, I wish I could be like them. And he was like, you are like them. I was like, what? No. And he proceeded to tell me this beautiful story. I was sitting there in therapy, like tearing up when he said it, but he told me this amazing story about like Oh my god. He was like, okay, I had a client once who was like you, struggling with something pretty similar. I drew 2 pictures of her, even though I'm not the best artist. I drew a picture of her like shrinking into her skin and just like trying to make herself as small and hidden as possible. And I drew a picture of her, another picture of her like right beside it, of her, walking confidently and like, just sharing the world who she is. And I asked her like, which one is beautiful? And she was like, well, both of them are. And I just but it's about how you carry yourself and how you think of yourself that shares how other people, that informs how other people think of you. Yeah. So I was like, and he said that to me, and I was just, I feel like the phrase believe in yourself is so overused, but you have to believe that you were put here to be someone great, to be someone special. You have to treat yourself like the amazing human being that you are. Right? So I don't know, I think that was kind of the turning point for me where things sort of started working, and then we got into all the nitty gritty, and eventually I was like, I think it was my last session was this October. I know you still love and respect yourself. I know you do. It's just buried under all these layers of I'm not good enough. I don't look like Britney Spears. I don't look like Gigi Hadid. Female role models, I'm so privileged to have them, but there's always a sense, especially with I'm gonna vilify social media, but it'll always a sense of comparison and they have made it so far. I'm just this girl, or I'm just this kid, right? What am I gonna do? And I want people to know that deep down there's a part of you that still cares and still loves you for the person you were when you were born. And would you want them to have the best? Would you want them to live the fullest, healthiest, happiest life they possibly could? Because they deserve everything, and so you deserve everything. You know what I mean? And just don't be afraid to speak up for yourself when you know you aren't getting everything you deserve. So.
My name is Jolia Awadallah. I'm currently in my 5th year as a clinical psychology PhD student. I am so passionate about ADHD and autism, neurodevelopmental disorders in general. And I have worked a lot with teens who struggle with autism and ADHD. And, my passion is helping them discover the best strategies that align with who they are. Well, let's start with the basics. ADHD stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder, which means it's related to the development of the brain and how it affects focus, manage time, stay organized, and control impulses. It's not about being lazy or careless. It's about having a brain that works differently. Especially when it comes to attention and self-regulation. And honestly, Zara, I can never explain it better than Dr. Edward Hallwell. He's one of the top experts on ADHD. He says having ADHD is kind of like having a Ferrari brain with bicycle brakes. right? In other words, your brain is fast, powerful, creative, but it can be tough to control sometimes. Think of it like having a brain that's wired for curiosity and quick thinking, but that sometimes has trouble slowing down or focusing on one thing at a time. It actually varies a lot between teens and boys and girls too. So, it presents differently in teens girls versus teens boys versus adults. So, to start off, in teens in general, ADHD can sometimes look more emotional. There may be more frustration, social struggles, or feeling misunderstood. And like I said, it's different in girls. Boys show it more with the hyperactivity type, versus girls are more likely to have the inattentive type. That means that they might daydream a lot, struggle with finishing homework, or seem spacey, but they're less likely to get identified. They also, the girls internalize their struggles, leading to anxiety, perfectionism, and even some depression. And I think that's why so many girls get missed or misdiagnosed. And actually, Zara, there was something very interesting about the research of ADHD in girls and boys. Girls with ADHD often can stop themselves from blurting things out or acting impulsively, but they tend to do it by slowing down a bit and taking their time. And that's actually a great strategy. Versus boys with ADHD, they're more likely to keep going fast and more likely to make mistakes when they're trying to stop themselves. But here's the thing, both boys and girls with ADHD have a harder time staying consistent and tuning out distraction compared to teens without ADHD.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Big Five Mental Health Podcast. As always, there will be links for everything that we use to make this and research links, things that you can do to get involved, all linked at the bottom of the podcast. So hopefully you'll make use of those. And I just want to thank you so much for being here, because ending the stigma and educating is really a two-way street. So whether you're someone who thinks you might have a mental health challenge or are the friend or loved one of someone who does, it's really important that you're here, and it was a great first step to take. So I hope you learned something. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.